Chapter 45. The Physic Chest. "And another thing, Septimus," said Marcia, sounding as stern as she could manage while they watched Catchpole inexpertly wielding a large crowbar, trying to lever up a dusty floorboard in the broom closet. "You are not to stay out at night on your own ever again." "What? Never?" Septimus looked up, saw the smile in Marcia's eyes, and ventured. "Not even when I'm really old? Like when I'm 30? "Not while you're my apprentice, you're not. Oh, for goodness sake, Catchpole, give me the crowbar and I'll do it. And don't think that going out with an irresponsible old ghost will be all right either, because it won't. Anyway, whoever nailed this board down made a good job of it. I sincerely hope that by the time you're 30, aha, I think it's moving, you will have an apprentice of your own, and then it will be your turn to worry." Marcia's smile faded as she remembered. She straightened up and looked Septimus in the eye. "But I hope you never find a letter from them written 500 years ago the way I found yours. Never." "No, I hope not, too," said Septimus quietly. Marcia set to with the crowbar again, and a few moments later there was a loud crack, as the nails finally gave up their struggle against the determined extraordinary wizard. Septimus helped Marcia lift the board. "I had no idea that this rose was here," said Marcia, closely inspecting the intricate rose that was carved deep into the wood. It was much worn away by hundreds of years of feet tramping over it, for the broom closet had previously been used as a cloakroom, but the delicate curves of its petals were still clearly visible. "It was my symbol," said Septimus almost proudly. Now that he was back safe in his own time, Septimus was beginning to enjoy thinking about his time with Marcellus Pye. "It's the old sign for a seventh son. Marcellus had it carved into his table years before I got there." "Wicked man," said Marcia. "I'd like to tell him a thing or two." "He was okay, really," Septimus ventured. "We'll agree to differ on that subject, Septimus," said Marcia huffily. "I am just about prepared to dig out this chest full of quackery, since even a remote chance of curing the sickenese is worth a try. But you will never find me agreeing that that man was okay, really. Never." Septimus and Marcia knelt down and peered into the dusty void under the floor. Gingerly, Septimus put his hand into the space, and the glow from his dragon ring found an answering shine in the depths. "I can see it," he said, amazed. "Here it is, just like Marcellus said it would be. Sub rosa, hidden beneath the rose." "Oh, twaddle and tripe," Marcia huffed. "Now come on, Catchpole, don't just stand there gawking. We could do with a hand to get this thing out." It took more than the weedy Catchpole's help to lift out the chest. It needed the combined efforts of 5 ordinary wizards, without Catchpole, who suddenly felt dizzy, to drag the chest onto the spiral stairs. At the top of the tower, Marcia, Septimus, and the 5 wizards heaved the chest and dragged it along the landing. The great purple door to Marcia's room swung open, and everyone pushed and pulled the small but amazingly heavy chest inside. Marcia stood up with a groan and rubbed her back. "Are you sure this thing isn't just full of bricks?" she said. "What could it possibly have in it to make it so heavy?" "Gold. It's lined with really thick slabs of the stuff," said Septimus. "What on earth for?" asked Marcia indignantly. "Because it's the purest, most perfect metal, and Physik is all about that too, sort of trying to reach perfection with ourselves." Septimus trailed off, noticing Marcia's exasperated expression. It was not lost on the ordinary wizards either, who quickly scuttled away. Marcia sighed. She looked down at the blackened old chest with its scraped gold corners and unbroken golden bands, and she just knew that it was going to be trouble, not to mention the fact that it was making horrible dents in her best Chinese carpet. "It's all very well, Septimus," she said, somewhat grumpily, "but how on earth do you intend to open this thing?" "Easy," said Septimus. He knelt beside the chest and took the key from around his neck. Marcia watched as he pressed it into its mirror image on the front of the chest, and slowly the lid silently opened. Septimus looked inside and smiled. Everything was as he remembered, neatly laid out, clean and tidy. Lines of gleaming gold instruments lay in a tray. Bottles of tinctures and mixes, remedies and fusions lay just as he had left them. And at the bottom of the chest was what Septimus was looking for, his carefully written formula for the antidote to the sickenese. "Here it is," he said, triumphantly pulling out a ragged piece of much folded vellum. "Look!" Septimus handed it to Marcia, who put her spectacles on. The hours of perusing Jilligin's prediction tables and calculations had done her eyesight no good at all, and she peered at the fine brown ink scrawl that covered the vellum. Her face brightened. At least she recognized what it was, an example of late Etheldreda, early Esmeralda variant script, with the typical reverse scrawl used by the physicians of those days. "Right, Septimus," said Marcia briskly, glad at last to be able to take charge. "Get yourself down to the manuscriptorium and have the ancient script scribe write you an immediate translation. Immediate, mind. No messing about. There's no time to lose. Off you go. Well, go on." Septimus shook his head. "But I don't need to do that. I wrote this myself." Marcia felt very odd. She had to go and sit down. Some hours later, Septimus was carefully drawing up a colloid of silver with his pipette and dropping it into a large flask. Marcia, feeling rather unnecessary, sat watching her apprentice finding his way around the old physic chest with an ease that amazed her. Despite Septimus's long tangled hair, which she really must get him to do something about, and the fact that he was definitely a little taller and thinner, she found it hard to believe that he had really been away for nearly 6 months of his life, while only 2 days had passed at the castle. And something else was different about Septimus, too. He was more assured, and this was what Marcia found really strange. Now he knew and believed things that she did not. That took a bit of getting used to. "So, do I add the valerian to this, or add this to the valerian? What do you think?" Septimus's voice broke into Marcia's thoughts. "You're the expert, Septimus," said Marcia, trying to get used to her new role. "But as a general rule, I would say add light to dark." "Okay." Septimus added the greenish oil to the contents of his flask. "Now, could you pass me the balance, please?" he asked. Getting into her role of lab assistant, Marcia handed Septimus a small set of gold scales, complete with tiny gold weights. She watched him pick up the smallest weight with a long-nosed pair of tweezers and place it on the balance. Then, taking out a tiny, round, bowled gold spoon, Septimus measured out a fine blue powder and poured it onto the other side of the scales until the 2 sides were delicately balanced. And then something caught his eye. He looked at the spoon more closely and frowned. "What's wrong?" asked Marcia. Septimus passed her the spoon. He pointed his blue-stained finger to some marks underneath the handle. Marcia fished out her spectacles from her pocket and peered at the scratches on the spoon. "Septimus," she read slowly. "I remember writing that," said Septimus. "It was the day after I arrived. I wrote my name everywhere for a while. It was like writing messages forward to our own time." Marcia folded up her spectacles and dabbed at her eyes with her purple silk handkerchief. "That powder stings," she said. "You should put the lid back on." Several hours later, when the mixture had cooled, Septimus went back to complete the serum. He removed the large crystal that had formed, crushed it in a mortar and pestle, and returned the powdered crystal to the flask. He put a stopper in the flask, shook the mixture for 13 seconds until it became clear, and poured it into a tall, clear glass medicine bottle. Now Septimus lit a candle. Then he took his diving rod from the physic chest, dipped it into the mixture, turned it 7 times, and held it up to the candle flame. It looked good. Septimus placed a clean piece of silk over the open top and pushed a cork down onto it, creating a tight seal. "It's finished," he called up the stairs. Marcia hurried down. "Now for the final test," said Septimus, a little nervously. Marcia watched her apprentice pick up the bottle and hold it up to the light of the little arched window, turning it so that it caught a ray of sunlight. The sunlight struck the glass, traveled through the liquid, and emerged as a blindingly blue streak of light. "It works! It works!" Septimus shouted. "No more than I would expect," Marcia smiled. "Now get your cloak, Septimus. We have to get this to where it's needed. There is no time to lose." As Marcia and her apprentice quickly crossed the Wizard Tower courtyard, the dragon kennel shook as Spitfire hurled himself at the door. Septimus ran up to the door and said, "I'll be back soon, Spitfire. Really, I will. Then you can come out. I promise. See you later, Spitfire." "Jenna will have to undo the seek," Marcia told him. "He'll be a complete pest until then. He won't leave you alone." "I know," said Septimus, clutching the bottle of antidote close and running to catch up as Marcia took the side gate out into a small alley. They were on their way to the infirmary. Knowing Septimus's dislike of heights, Marcia ignored the shortcut along the castle walls and instead took the winding streets below. Septimus thought that he had never been so happy as he was now, except perhaps when he had returned to the Wizard Tower from the manuscriptorium the previous day, and the writing across the floor had said, "Welcome back to your time, apprentice. We have missed you." That had been a good moment, a very good moment. Septimus loved the fact that once again he was wearing the green robes of the extraordinary apprentice, rather than the black and red robes of an alchemy apprentice, and it was his friends that called out and said hello, with no weird accents and strange words that you always had to think twice about. Soon they reached the north gate. "Afternoon, your extraordinariness," said Grinch, blocking their path. "Oh, good afternoon, Grinch," said Marcia, a little curtly. "You going anywhere nice?" asked Grinch, as Marcia tried to squeeze around him and get onto the drawbridge. "No. Would you mind getting out of the way, please, Grinch?" "Oh, sorry, your extraordinariness. Of course." Grinch squeezed himself against the gatehouse wall to allow Marcia and Septimus to pass. "Oh, hello," said Grinch, noticing Septimus. "You gave your poor dad a couple of sleepless nights, you did." Suddenly Septimus remembered. "Dad, Grinch, Etheldra's portrait. Grinch, you have to go down to the palace right now, and you have to tell Dad to put that picture back exactly where you found it. Then he's got to reseal the room, properly." Grinch's eyes widened in surprise. "What?" he said. "Put that portrait back exactly where you found it, the one of Queen Etheldra." "Well, I'm not surprised he don't like looking at it. She's a scary old bird, no mistake about it. But just in case you didn't notice, I got a gatehouse to run here, and I can't just drop everything and go rearranging someone's pictures for 'em." Grinch turned away abruptly to take a silver penny from a returning infirmary nurse. Marcia saw Septimus's look of dismay. She had no idea what it was about, but she had learned enough over the past few months to know that if something was bothering Septimus, she should take notice of it. She swept onto the drawbridge where Grinch was now passing time with a couple of boys coming back from the forest with bunches of kindling. "Grinch," she said, towering over the gatekeeper, her winter cloak blowing in the breeze and making Grinch sneeze because he was allergic to fur. "You will do as you are asked, now. You and Silas Heap are to move that portrait, and I will come and reseal the room. Mark my words, there will be trouble if I do not find that portrait exactly where it should be." "Achoo! Can't! Achoo! Leave the gate! Achoo! 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 Unattended! Mrs. Grinch can step in. Mrs. Grinch is visiting her sister in the infirmary. Got bit yesterday." "Oh, I'm very sorry. Well, Lucy then. Lucy, in case you didn't know, has run off after that no-good brother of your apprentice. Much good may it do her," snapped Grinch. "But if it's so important, I'll go and do the picture after sunset once I get the bridge up, all right?" "No, Grinch, that will not be all right. You will just have to close the north gate for the afternoon." Grinch looked horrified. "I can't do that," he protested. "That has never been done in my time as a gatekeeper. Never." "There's always a first time for everything, Grinch," Marcia said in a steely voice. "Just as there will be a first time for a gatekeeper being sent to the lockup while still on duty." "Huh? You wouldn't." "I would. Indeed, I will." "Very well, then. Excuse me for a moment, Madam Marcia." Grinch went over to the gatehouse door and yelled into the shadows of the drawbridge winding room. "Hey, bridge boy," bawled Grinch. "Wake up, you lazy lummox." The boy appeared, bleary-eyed. "What?" he said grumpily. "Promotion for you," Grinch told him. "You're taking over until Mrs. Grinch gets back. No pocketing the money, mind. Be polite to the customers and don't let no one over that without paying. Especially your good-for-nothing friends. Got that?" The bridge boy, who was staring open-mouthed at the sight of the extraordinary wizard, standing no more than a few feet away, nodded slowly. "Good," snapped Grinch, "because I am on an important mission for the extraordinary, and I don't want to be worrying about the bridge while I'm away on such a delicate matter." Grinch handed the bridge boy his money bag, along with the warning, "And I know exactly how much is in there, so don't try any funny business." Then he turned and set off from the north gatehouse with a sigh. More Heap trouble, he thought. Didn't he have enough already?